Ms. Kutch.
Thank you. So my name is Jess Kutch. I'm the co-founder of coworker.org. Coworker.org is an online platform for workers' rights. We launched in early 2013, and we're now hosting more than 30 workplace campaigns by individuals around the country. Before creating coworker.org, I served as organizing director for change.org, which is one of the world's largest online petition sites. I also served 5 years in the digital department at the Service Employees International Union, SEIU. So I think I can offer the board today some perspective about the use of email by employees, advocacy organizations, and just about everybody else. I can also speak to the feasibility of operating an email portal or some type of messaging system. And then finally, I'd like to address concerns about privacy and potential abuse of email addresses. So in 2014, the public expects to engage with organizations electronically. We bank online, we shop for health insurance online. I'm even at this hearing today because I emailed the board a request to appear before you. So every day we're increasingly organizing every aspect of our lives online. And email is still a major part of any organization's communications program. I think this was perhaps most evident during the last 2 election cycles. In 2006, I managed an email program for SEIU called Value Care Value Nurses. The campaign sought to engage non-union nurses nationwide around safe staffing and patient care issues. The union matched publicly available RN registry lists with commercially available email addresses, and from those matches we built an email list of 300,000 non-union nurses nationwide. Now I want to note that the union's ability to do this kind of email matching is highly unusual and particular to nurses in the registry lists. It's also, in most cases, prohibitively expensive. But for 2 years, we sent biweekly emails to that list. Our emails mobilized nurses around issues impacting their profession, spurring them to write letters to the editor, submitting testimony to the CMS, and more. I bring up this example to highlight that email contact between unions and employees is nothing new. In this case, the RNs had no prior contact with the union, yet tens of thousands engaged with our campaigns and took part in our action. Those who no longer wish to receive email simply opted out by hitting the unsubscribe link on the bottom of that email, and many did just that. But the vast majority remained subscribed to our list, and we assume that's because they found value in it. I have no doubt that people who work for an employer where there is an active union organizing drive will be interested in receiving information from union staff via email. And those who are not interested can unsubscribe, filter those emails to folders, or block a sender. The fact that union organizers can knock on your door but can't schedule their visit via email seems strange to me. I'd also like to address the question of whether to create a closed-off email portal or a messaging system. I recognize this could take shape in a number of different ways, and the board doesn't go into much detail on that subject. But regardless of the details, I strongly encourage the board to stay out of the business of delivering email messages to people. And I can share my experiences at change.org to give you a sense of just how complicated that might be. Change earns revenue from petitions sponsored by organizations, political campaigns, and companies, and its email list is what drives the vast majority of petition signatures. So as you can imagine, change.org staff are therefore very careful to ensure that their emails are getting through to users and aren't blocked by spam filters or ending up in junk email folders. This is a term called email deliverability. It's used to describe the ability to get an email into the intended recipient's email inbox. And let me tell you, it's not easy. Email providers are constantly changing the requirements for mass emails in an attempt to protect their users from spam. But these changes impact everybody. In 2011, only 76.5% of commercial emails sent reached recipient inboxes, according to the industry leader Return Path, and they're experts in email deliverability. Furthermore, email blocked and flagged as spam increased 24% that year. Every outgoing mail server IP has a reputation score, and that score is impacted by a number of factors, ranging from the number of emails sent to recent user spam flags. If your IP address gets hit with a low score, it will be nearly impossible to get emails into your recipients' inboxes. While I worked at Change, we frequently encountered deliverability problems. On any given month, a service like AOL would decide to block our emails. This would result in a steep drop in email open rates and petition signatures because far fewer people were even seeing Change.org's emails. A drop in open rates would send our team scrambling to contact the responsible servers and negotiate a solution. It's basically a never-ending game of cat and mouse. And companies that rely on email revenue have whole teams dedicated to ensuring deliverability. All of this is to say, running any kind of system that sends emails to people is a complicated business. Now, if the messaging system being proposed functions more as a private online message board, then the concern I have is primarily about access. Most online communication occurs through channels: social media, text messaging, and email. And as I stated earlier, the vast majority of traffic to change.org was generated by its own email list. Just 26% of the traffic on my own website, coworker.org, has been generated by people directly entering in that address to its browser window. So if employees must affirmatively enter a chat room or a message board, very few will receive information from a union about an upcoming election. I know I'm low on time, so I was going to touch on the things get more complicated when you start requiring a login access, and I just would request that the board be mindful that many people today are accessing the internet via their mobile phones. According to a recent Pew Research Internet project, 67% of adults in the U.S. access the internet via their phones, and 34% of adults rely entirely on their phones for internet access. And I'm sure if you've ever tried to log into something on your phone, you know how difficult that can be. So even if an employee is successful at finding the online messaging system, it's unlikely a worker will complete the steps necessary to access that system and communicate with others. So I'd just like to thank the board for allowing me to testify today. I do believe that email is one of the safest methods for communicating online. Most providers like Google are vigilant at locating and identifying malicious attachments in emails. Employers' internal email systems are also well protected by commercially available software. And so, yeah, those are my comments. Thanks for providing me with the opportunity.
Ms. Kutch, something you said actually scared me. I remember here as Awa tells me that every email I send him ends up in his spam folder, and I've always suspected that it's intentional. But if we have the forced disclosure of work email addresses, and if hypothetically some of those emails end up in spam folders by virtue of the normal operation of the spam folder, my fear is we will end up getting 8A1 charges, and then I'll have to learn something about how technology works. But, I mean, do some of those issues, again, maybe militate in favor of focusing on personal contact information in this area rather than business contact information because of the possible peripheral issues that it may generate in other areas that we focus on, like surveillance is another one? Or do you think that they're really equivalent and we should just address personal contact information and work-related contact information the same?
I mean, if I'm understanding you correctly, I don't think it's really an issue of whether it's employer email address or personal email address. You'll still be dealing with the same complications. An employer postmaster can block an IP address, but so can AOL or Gmail, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the triggers are probably going to be different, but you're still running that risk that those emails are never reaching those inboxes.
But your advice would be if we go down the road of some sort of, even if it's supplemental third-party portal, we need to be cognizant of the possibility that spam filters may end up influencing whatever the board may sponsor if we were to do that.
That's correct.
Okay, thanks.
Do you have any views based on your experience about privacy concerns that might be raised about, based on requiring employers to provide email addresses or cell phone numbers of employees?
So this would be the question of opt-in versus opt-out.
That's one of the questions.
So I brought up the example of the Value Care Value Nurses campaign for that reason. Nurses on that list were able to unsubscribe. It was a very clear process. It didn't seem to cause confusion. So, I think that increasingly our email addresses are available in the world, and I think especially in an environment where employees are aware that there's an active union organizing drive, it's not going to be an issue of privacy to receive an email from a union.
What's the theory behind allowing people to unsubscribe?
So, I mean, most unions use email providers to send out mass emails. And so those are companies like Blue State Digital, Nation Builder, Salsa, Convio. All of those companies require an unsubscribe link. And the reason they require an unsubscribe link is because I mean, it's an established best practice, but they don't want users flagging things as spam. They would rather they just unsubscribe from the list, and that protects their IP address so that their deliverability remains high. So there's already sort of mechanisms in place in the market to ensure that, that be an option when mass emails are sent out. Now, the other option is there will be, I'm sure, individual emails sent out. And I feel like that is a different thing. You don't unsubscribe from, I can't unsubscribe from an email from you.
You might want
no.
to, but maybe you technically can't.
Well, I could block you
Right.
or ignore the email, but yeah.
Well, I guess what I'm thinking of is obviously unsubscribe developed as a matter of technology for some reason. And I'm wondering if you know why that was, other than the technical piece of the IP address.
I'm actually not familiar with the history. I imagine
Okay.
it was, it had to do in part with making sure deliverability remained high. So it was sort of a compromise between email providers and the servers that send out mass emails, but that's just my guess.
Okay. And are there any organizations that you would sort of look to as a lodestar of being think tanks in the area of electronic privacy, like Epic? Anyone like that?
None come to mind. There's the forward, I'm sorry, I'm blanking. The email deliverability industry leader return path has a
Right.
ton of case studies, so they might be worth consulting on that issue.
Okay. And then the last piece is I'm just going to try a summation of what you were trying to get across to us. If you're not a nimble organization trying to manage your own email message board or some portal or any sort of mass email system would be a big technical undertaking.
Yes.
Okay.
In terms of opting in and opting out, and let me know if you have had the experience, would it be correct to say that an unsubscribe might be a safer route than a opt-in or opt-out that is administered by an employer, given that opting in and opting out may be a gauge to the employer of the interest or non-interest in a union being contacted by an individual?
Yeah, I'm not entirely clear on the process that's being proposed around opting in or opting out, but I do believe that email's been around for more than 20 years, and the act of unsubscribing is well known among everyone I've ever met who's used email and on the many email lists I've operated. So I don't feel like I think that's an acceptable way for people to opt out of email lists and of receiving them.
Okay. Thank you.